the US government putting Huawei on the entity list effectively prohibited all the US tech companies for selling any components to Huawei. I mean, the main concern is that the company could potentially be used by the Chinese government. How do you respond to that kind of accusations?
Interestingly, the entity list issue is about us buying from American companies, so it's not about the other issue about alleged backdoors or the fact that we would potentially spy or we'd shut down the networks. So it's an effort to really hurt Huawei around the world, but it's kind of counterintuitive. But if we're not allowed to spend $11 billion a year from buying high-end products from major American companies, that's going to hurt America.
So the company is trying to be a big part of US 5G critical infrastructure, which the US government is very sensitive about. Do you think it's reasonable for the US government to be wary about it?
We could get a reasonable amount of business and provide tremendous value to our small customers and their rural customers without even getting into the 5G issue. But no, we don't think it's fair. We believe that there are mechanisms that can be put in place to provide assurance to the U.S. government. But because of the geopolitical overlay with these U.S.-China talks, we becoming a bargaining chip, they're not even willing to talk to us about that. So we don't think it's reasonable not to talk to us, and we hope at some point they will.
Back then, you helped draft the national security for cyberspace back in 2003. So you know this space very, very well. And I wonder back then, we're talking 16 years ago, was China an issue? Was Huawei an issue?
I will say that since that time, the rise of China economically and militarily has been a concern. When I left the White House staff in 2003, we were a clarion call to try to improve cybersecurity for government and companies. But when you look at the actions taken in the following 15 or 16 years, not enough was done. Not enough people took it seriously because people didn't think it was critically important. So it's certainly true that we have to be safe. We have to address it. But the notion that blocking Huawei is going to make America safer is not really right. And there needs to be a comprehensive approach to real cybersecurity risk. And you need to have standards and best practices.
You're saying that the U.S. is lagging in coming up with a comprehensive strategy, how to protect the national security development.
Well, I hate to be explicitly critical of the U.S. government, because part of what we're trying to say is, look, let's calm down the rhetoric. There's a lot of words, there's a lot that's said, there's a lot of negative actions taken against Huawei. We don't want to see the China government block Apple. We don't want to see the China government create their own entity list. We've got to talk about these things.
I think one of the big concern also is the company's relationship or claimed relationship with the Chinese government. How do you address that concern?
The U.S. government believes that China is not a country that has a rule of law. They believe the China government will force Huawei to do whatever it is that they want to do. And it's hard to prove a negative. We can do things like I've suggested about access to customer network. If we have mechanisms to provide transparency, we can assure that these bad things are not happening. And regarding the products, these techniques to evaluate the products and monitor the networks, they can provide assurance that we can't be forced to do those things.
It's really a trust issue, right?
People ask me if I trust the Chinese government, if I trust Huawei, and the fact is, I don't trust anybody, okay? I don't think the old days when Ronald Reagan was involved in negotiations with the Soviet Union on the arms control, the approach of trust but verify, that's not good enough anymore. We have to have trust through verification.
There was a recent case that two former Czech managers employed by Huawei saying that they were required to collect clients' sensitive personal information. How do you respond to that?
Those allegations have not been fully investigated yet. If it's true, then shame on us. But even with what is legally considered by judges to be an effective compliance program, it's recognized that employees can do the wrong thing. We hope we can tone it down. We can investigate situations to see what the facts are. Folks need to be held accountable, whether it's employees, whether it's managers or executives, and companies need to be held accountable when it's appropriate to do so.